No industry changes faster than modern marketing. Great marketers need an edge. Great marketers need to be brave. The Brave Marketer podcast provides an opportunity for each guest to share a story where they exhibited bravery by taking a risk that made a dramatic impact in the market. Our guests are marketers from top brands and agencies who share the exact strategies and tactics they used in their brave marketing moment. We then dive deep into topics like advertising, consumer privacy, crypto marketing, brand safety, and navigating a future without third-party cookies. Hosted by Brave Software and me, Donnie Devoren, head of sales at Brave. Together, we'll get a backstage view of the brave marketing moments and creative mindset work that's shaping today's most influential brands. You're listening to a new episode of the Brave Marketer podcast, and this one features Chad Stoller, who's the EVP over at UM. I think you're really going to enjoy this one because we dive deep into this really awesome brave marketing moment that features Terry Tate and this series about this office linebacker who basically tackles people inside of the office. And there are so many brave moments that got Chad to end up publishing this online that I think you'll really enjoy the story. It's a great one. But before we get into today's episode, we want to highlight our Brave Pick of the Week. Every episode, we choose a brand that has run an ad campaign with us. And this week, we're going to feature Gemini. Gemini has a widget. They run sponsored images. They run push notifications. Gemini is one of the biggest crypto exchanges. And they use Brave because we have a huge crypto audience. Something like 70% of our audience buys and sells cryptocurrencies. So if advertisers want to reach a crypto audience, Brave is definitely the place to go. Now, in this week's episode, you'll meet Chad Stoller, EVP, Global Chief Innovation Officer for UM Worldwide over at IPG. And Chad is responsible for the agency's innovation agenda while working with individual clients to solve old challenges in new ways. In addition to Chad's role within UM, Chad has served as the managing partner of the IPG Media Lab since 2011. The lab is the advertising industry's longest-running media futures agency with thought leadership in regards to the future of audience attention, consumer disruption, and action planning for new customer connections. Hello, Chad. Welcome to the Brave Marketer podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing well as well. Well, thanks so much for taking time and being on our show. And before we get to your brave marketing moment, why don't we just talk about you and what's going on right now? So what's the most exciting thing that you're working on right now?
So one of the things that I do with my job at UM is I'm always trying to look to the future and kind of bring it back to be able to basically try to understand what are the areas that our clients are going to care about, anywhere from 6 months to 18 months out to that being even a little bit further. And so the certain areas that we're really spending a lot of time trying to get a deeper dive on are just all the new areas of impulse. Like, what is this whole impulse economy? What are the new ways that people are, whether it's discovering products or discovering ideas, and how quickly are they going from their moment of discovery to a point of purchase or a point of connection? So that's an area where me and my team were spending a great deal of our time. And that could be everywhere from the tools and the tactics that can enable that to understanding the platforms a little bit, to also just maybe a little bit more of the ethnography and the understanding of the content that's getting created and the content that's getting consumed. We like to refer to it as the impulse economy. Sometimes we talk about it as the complete collapse of the funnel. But either way, we're just trying to get in front of some of the new opportunities for demand.
Got it. What are some examples of some of the categories that may have not been impulse before, but now are impulse?
Well, I think you're seeing that now, especially in social platforms, right? The first wave was essentially a lot of these platforms creating this opportunity for checkout, right? Or just enabling products for sale. However, now you're seeing them all start to not only build their own stores, but also build their own marketplaces. So I feel like we're seeing, social platforms now becoming these like one-stop shops for impulse purchases. We're also starting to see, and I'm kind of really excited by it, we're seeing a lot of video platforms starting to really embrace commerce as well. And while we're certainly not at the level of China, and the way that video can move a lot of product in China, we're starting to see some of these very interesting video platforms, whether they're video on demand platforms or live video platforms, start to usher in opportunities for commerce and basically for sales activity. So we're seeing so many new partners that are emerging in this space.
Yeah, I think about purchases like cars, where that would probably be a very long purchase sales cycle. But now that you can buy a Tesla online, it may be one of those things where a couple would be like, see so many Teslas on the road. They just love the way they look. And like, honey, let's just hop on the computer and get a Tesla.
Yeah, I got it. Diane, it's very funny that you say that because we have essentially launched a new product with BMW, which it's an AR feature for a BMW Mini. And the part about it that is like so super cool is that, it just has this ability where it's like you see the product and you want to give it a shot in terms of just seeing what it's going to look like in your driveway, right? Like everyone likes to talk about the size of a Mini, but this idea to place a Mini in any kind of aspect of your environment is just like super cool. And that's exactly the kind of like new features and new content that people want. Right? It's kind of like they've seen the car, they've demonstrated the car, they've talked to owners. There's all of this activity that is out there. However, now what happens is somebody wants to see, like, what does this vehicle mean to me? How is it going to fit in my life? And it's about just meeting the consumer where their expectations are.
Yeah, exactly right. And you're right about the social platforms where the checkout process has become so easy, especially that they're integrated with PayPal. And now we're seeing, crypto purchases. There are companies that allow you to do crypto purchases with a click of a button that collects your wallet. And that's, it's a big thing for our audience who's very into crypto. So with that being said, as you know, this podcast is The Brave Marketer. And so we're all about talking to marketers that are taking risks on their job and seeing how it pays out. Is the reward worth the risk? And you have a great one with Terry Tate Linebacker series that we would love to really dive into.
Well, what's funny is that in 2001 or 2000, actually, I don't even know. It's 2000, 2001, and it's such a long time ago. But what I love about telling this particular story is that this was a miracle. This was nobody's brainchild. The program, for those of you who don't know, and maybe some of your listeners don't know, it's still to this day ranked as like one of the top 10 Super Bowl commercials of all time. But the general idea was that there is a fictitious employee named Terry Tate who is an office linebacker. And his job is to maintain order in the office environment by simply full-on tackling employees. It was a fictitious role that this one particular manager essentially says, I'm going to hire this person to increase efficiency in my workplace, and Terry Tate. So it went on to be a Super Bowl commercial. And at the time, it crushed any type of web video series that was out there. I think the only thing to date that had ever been done was BMW Films, which definitely set a really high bar. But Terry Tate Office Linebacker just came out, and it essentially just crushed bandwidth. It was like one of these things where, I wish I still had the emails from people saying, I just bought terabytes of data. I don't even know what that means. That was my favorite email that I got from the CMO of Reebok at the time, Mickey Pont, who basically was like, I don't know what a terabyte is. I don't need to know what a terabyte is. Is it enough? It was just like so funny. Like Akamai bills were coming in by the day just because they were hitting their streaming caps. But essentially, it's a funny thing because it was this idea that was just a miracle in the making. We had been working with a production company that represented a brilliant young director named Rawson Thurber, who went on to direct things like Dodgeball. He did Meet the Millers. He's got some new Netflix show that's coming out and stuff like that, who had a random tape of this character that he had created while he was at film school. And what had happened was this production company that I was doing a project with said, hey, I read in the paper, you guys just won the Reebok account. And I have something that's really funny. You should just see this tape. Just if anything, show it. It'll be worth a laugh. And I was like, okay, great. I leave the office around 10 o'clock that night. And for some reason, I left on the 5th floor of the office, not the 3rd floor. And the 5th floor, I get, the security guard is like, hey, Chad, there's somebody dropped something off for you. And it was a tape. And I put the tape in my backpack, and I don't think anything about it. I really don't. I just go home. And then right before bed, I realize I have this tape. I should just watch it, right? It's just like right before I go to bed. And I watch it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like the funniest thing I've seen in like forever. So at the time, we all had our two-way pagers, the SkyTel two-ways. And I text my boss, this guy, Peter Arnell, and there's some people out there who will know Peter Arnell and people who don't know Peter Arnell, but most people know Peter Arnell's reputation, who was constantly working, constantly on. And then it went on with two-way text messages going on the entire night of like, is it good? Is it really good? Is it Super Bowl good? It's Super Bowl great. I'm like, why are we talking about a Super Bowl commercial? He's like, well, they like football. And, it was like the most ridiculous conversation. So anyway, I have this, Peter says, okay, meet me 7 a.m. because we're kicking off with Reebok the next morning at like 9 a.m. I'm sitting outside Peter's office for 2 hours. I never even get in there. And Peter just looks at me and goes, we're on. You have the tape? Yeah. He goes, is it good? I'm like, yes, it's good. We've talked about this all night. He goes like, if it's not good, you will lose your job. Good. I'm like, yeah, that's good. That's perfect. It's like, that was kind of like every day of working for Peter Arnell. It's like, if you came back the next day, you're doing a good job. But anyway, the fact is that we have this tape, we play it, and everybody in the room just goes quiet. They have no idea what to think. They've just watched a football player in an office environment tackle everybody while running around in a Kansas City Chiefs jersey with like 56 on it, you know? And it was just like, at that time, so everyone looks at me and they're like, what should we do? And I'm just like, Super Bowl? And so everyone then agrees and they're like, this is great. Let's do it. Do it. What's it going to cost? We had no idea. I was making up everything as we were going along. Didn't even know if we could even make anything. So long story short, about 2 weeks go by. We work with the production company, work with Rawson, and we decide, let's make a series of web films. They'll be like 5 minutes a piece. We'll do 4 of them. We'll release them each week after the Super Bowl. We'll debut with a commercial, et cetera, et cetera. Everything's going fine. And we're in production and we have like 3 days left. And all of a sudden I get a phone call and it says, shut down all production. I'm like, what do you mean? And it turns out that people were getting super nervous. Well, it was, but you know, it was like one of these things where I was like, okay, all right, but we can address that. Anyway, they say, shut it down. So I guess a brave moment was me realizing, talking to my friend Miriam, I'm like, well, we've already paid for it, right? And she's like, we have already paid for it. I'm like, so if we finish it or we don't finish it, it doesn't really matter, right? And she's like, exactly. So we finish it. And then I'm told to put it on the shelf. And it's now sitting on the shelf. This is like award-winning work that's just sitting on a bookshelf, you know, in a bunch of like 1-inch master tapes. And I know the story goes on, but anyway, what eventually happens is Reebok gets a phone call from the NFL and says, we really need you to buy a Super Bowl commercial for various reasons. And they don't have any creative. So they call me immediately and I just get this phone call and it was just like, do you have a 1-minute Super Bowl commercial? And I'm like, I don't have a 1-minute Super Bowl commercial. I have 4 films. I'm like, now all of a sudden I'm like some director. I'm like, I have 4 films. I have cinema to art ready for you, ready to be delivered on the internet. And I basically cut a deal with Peter Arnell at the time. I'll go, I will give you all of the tapes and you can make the most wonderful Super Bowl commercial, but I need you to give me the room to do something on the internet that is going to be incredible. And he's like, sure, no problem. So they go, they do a reshoot, they do all this stuff, and they make a 1-minute Super Bowl commercial. Meanwhile, we race to build a website and we do this whole like production release of Terry Tate episodes and we do this whole thing. And immediately the commercial runs on the Super Bowl. I'll never forget, I had my apartment filled with people from the advertising industry. I was so nervous. I was just like, oh my God, is this thing going to be funny? And it just killed, right? So it absolutely kills. And then immediately, this was the days where you would actually fire up a web browser, which actually showed you site visits. And just never in my life have I ever seen something where it would go from like 57 to 680, 14,000, just the beyond exponential builds of something like that. And I realized, oh my God, we're onto something here. People are logging on every day, watching it 4 times. We're getting pictures of people just like saying, make way for the pain train. People putting up signs in their offices about if you kill the Joe, make some Mo. All of a sudden we're realizing that we're like, you know, we have all this culture. And then the best part is like, we got 3 more videos. And so we just keep releasing these videos and keep releasing these videos. And the whole thing was amazing. It's like, this was an idea that fell in our laps by a brilliant young director. I always just love that moment. I love the whole story. And again, apologies for the length of it, just because there's wonderful things that happen in the advertising industry that we should just celebrate for the fact that we actually entertained people with advertising. And we gave people some value in exchange for their attention. And we should just be happy about that. And we should celebrate the fact that people were entertained and we created a new category of content, of entertainment. And we also kind of just raised the bar as to like what brands should do and what brands shouldn't do. And so along the way, you had to be really brave to take a chance to do something like this. My favorite part, though, is that every year at the Super Bowl, all the people who are involved with that production, there's always that one email that goes around where Terry Tate is ranked as like, is it still one of the top 10 Super Bowl commercials or something? So it's like a reunion every year.
Yeah. I mean, let me ask you a question that came up with, so I was interviewing Duncan Bird at Fiverr, and we were talking about the Super Bowl commercial that he made. And we had a whole discussion about why isn't every commercial ad Super Bowl quality? Why are we only producing like that for the Super Bowl? Why do you think that is? Why can't it always be that type of quality?
Well, I think now I'm not going to claim to be an expert to pick apart the anatomy of a Super Bowl commercial, but like Super Bowl commercials generally win with high price talent, right? Or high price production. And then the third part is you have to have a really strong idea. And so I think that we see lots of commercials out there that have wonderful ideas, but we have a lot of clients and a lot of brands out there who, they question the investment. With a Super Bowl spot, I mean, who knows? With however much they are, I lose track. Once I think they started hitting over 4 million, it was kind of tough for me just to keep track as to what a spot is. And so if you're going to buy something at that level, people want to make the investment in the production. But when you're running TV or you're running pre-roll or you're running something that's like a 6-second commercial, people don't assign the same type of production value to it. Like if you think about it, right, some of the best stuff that's out there now, is just stuff that also takes advantage of the environment that it's in. If somebody can deliver a product message in 6 seconds and it's a compelling message, it's like I look at that and I say, it's well done.
Absolutely. And looking at your bio, you have this line in there that says you like to solve old challenges in new ways. What are some more like recent examples of that?
It's a good question. And I'll tell you, so the work that I've done with running the Media Lab at Interpublic, so I've run the Media Lab for 10 years. And solving problems in new ways was really one of the strengths of the Media Lab when we were doing a lot more work in physical exploration and physical spaces. So for instance, one of the things that we used to do was we worked a lot with various camera sensor technologies as well as image recognition software to essentially create more efficiencies with media. We built this one platform, which I really loved, which was this trailer. It was a concept. We never deployed it. But one of my favorite things about it was a walk-up kiosk, and it had a still image of a movie poster. And it would then change based on if it was a male looking at it, a female looking at it, or a child looking at it. And it was this way to make sure that the right trailer was being displayed to the right customer. And it was this idea, and it kind of went nowhere because you need theaters to invest in it. And there's a lot of legal stuff that goes involved with something along those lines. But it was this general idea where here's a problem. But like in a movie theater, there is only finite amount of real estate that is set up for posters. So what happens is that if you have a poster for an animated, that poster is only good until around 4 o'clock each day. So what happens after 4 o'clock when you have adults going into the movie theater? Maybe that's a good chance to throw in a poster for something else, right? This is a very small tactic, but if you start thinking about the way that you have physical spaces and the way you had physical signage, there was no way to truly optimize those experiences to get those correct efficiencies. So that was like one thing that we did. We did other things where it was like typically we looked at a lot of research in terms of how can you measure the effectiveness of outdoor advertising. And so we started looking at different ways to build proxy audiences with that. So we did a lot of work with Wi-Fi in that way, with looking at Wi-Fi signals. And so that was a lot of R&D work. I would say the areas where we have been effective in terms of bringing some of that stuff to our clients and also just as like real benefits back to Interpublic and also the advertising ecosystem has been a lot of work that we did with attribution. And so, we were some of the early pioneers of working with Placed, which was really like one of the first ways where people can actually see are their digital campaigns actually driving foot traffic directly into various stores. And so I would say that helped definitely solve a problem that was out there. Definitely solve the problem. Like, does advertising work? I think we can all agree that's a problem that exists every day that we still have to go through those questions. But it was also one of these things for us where we were able to basically say, we have a problem where we don't know how people move around, how people respond to advertising and so forth. So does this give us a better planning tool? And that's what we do. We also, like, Place was part of a series of investments that we led through the Media Lab at Interpublic, because we've also invested in companies like Samba. And I'm sure Samba is a company that you're familiar with. And for us, we looked at Samba as this is going to be a possible new way to understand truly what a television rating is. So it's one thing to look at ratings in a linear environment, but shouldn't we start looking at television in terms of like, what are people doing with their television? So by working with companies like Samba, we started to have more insights into, okay, what is television-based behavior versus television-based viewing? Because TVs can be on for 10 hours a day, but if somebody's running a PlayStation on it for 8 hours and Netflix on another 2, that's not a TV that's watching TV, right? It's a TV that's doing another job. So we're always looking as to like new ways to work with partners. Sometimes we look at partners and we look at their core business and we basically say, that core business is interesting, but we're more interested in some of the side effects that you generate as a part of that business.
Obviously, our industry is changing very rapidly, and there's everything from privacy concerns going on and the death of the third-party cookie. And I'm not trying to lead the witness or anything, but what do you think is the most pressing challenge facing the industry right now?
I think returning to context is. When I first got into this business as a media planner, we were buying magazines based on interests of people. When we'd buy television shows based on like what our customers watch. And it was always data to support it, but it was this whole idea about context. And I felt that media plans were a lot more creative, right? Because it was like, you're like, hey, this is a great partner, and we're going to execute with this partner in this very unique way. So I feel like there is a struggle to balance this idea that you can always have a data-informed program that is working on reaching customers. What's going to happen now is like when you look at deprecation of third-party cookie, people all of a sudden have to say, wait a second, we might have to bring some creativity back into the way that we're doing media planning again. We might have to do some creative thinking in terms of how we're working with partners again. We might actually have to start working with our partners as actual production partners again, and just start thinking about new ways that we can actually, engage the consumer. I also think that consumers are figuring things out. I think they know that their data is in play. I don't think that they truly feel like they're being tracked like some of the narrative that is out there. But I do think that if we continue to go the way that we are going, they will start believing that. And I feel like we have to go back to the value exchange in the advertising relationship, which is that I'm giving you something in exchange for your attention. And I think we need to be more fair on that.
And I mean, really, just to put it to Brave for a second, really, that is the model of the whole. Your attention deserves to be rewarded. And that's why 70% of all the ad dollars that come into Brave go right into the consumer's hands via the basic attention token. And so that's why people are making, anywhere from $5 to $10 a month when they see an ad, because there's a value to someone's attention.
But do you believe as well that it's one thing to have a transaction for somebody's time, but isn't it also our job to kind of somehow improve their life a little bit? Give somebody some information, give them some entertainment, give them something back. I still feel that there's so many partners out there and publishers and companies out there that have something to offer. And if an advertiser can come in and almost like underwrite those offerings and support those offerings, we can all make the publishing space better. We can make the product space better. We can make the platform space better. There's nothing wrong with that. And I feel like sometimes we race to a world that is very precision, but sometimes that's at the cost of leaving a valuable impression. And that's not meant to be a pun on advertising.
Yeah, totally. And giving value back to the consumer can come in so many different ways. Like it could be in the form of making them laugh or making them cry and having an emotion, or it can be a coupon, right? An incentive where you're giving back. And, there's different types of advertising. I once learned this 20 years ago, which is advertising is a reason to buy and promotion is a reason to buy now. And where you're saying in the beginning is that we're turning into an impulse area and everything is a reason to buy now. So is all advertising turning into promotional advertising? And maybe we're moving in that direction.
I mean, obviously, with just all of the acceleration of e-commerce, and especially with the acceleration over the last 3 years, is that there is this on-demand economy, right? There's people who just want things. They want things now. They expect things now. Like consumer expectation is something that I think is it's complicated, right? Because it's kind of like we always have this pace of, okay, we want to reach the right customer, okay? But what we don't necessarily anticipate is that the customer expects it right away. And to me, that's always one of the biggest threats of Amazon is that Amazon just continues to raise the bar, right? Where it's like, hey, is 2 hours not good enough for you? It was kind of like, wait a second, if I want this thing, I can have this in 2 hours. That's pretty good. Meanwhile, I can order a t-shirt from some like big retail clothing company and it'll take 8 days to get to me. Like that's a big disconnect. And those expectations make you challenge your perception of that brand and challenge your loyalty to that brand. Like I love that particular company. I love getting their t-shirts, but it's like, if they can't get it to me, if the spread now is 2 hours and 8 days, I can find something that's in the middle.
And I have to pay $8 for shipping on top of that?
Yeah.
The $30 t-shirt is now $38 and I have to wait for 8 days. Oh, and because I don't remember my username and password, I have to continue as a guest and put in all my information all over again. Now I got to do a search on Honey, and find a code. Right. And then the code doesn't work because it was expired. Even though it had 97% thumbs up, it just doesn't work for me. Am I one of the 3% it didn't work for?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Whenever you see this code worked for like 2,800. Do you believe those? I don't believe them.
I don't know, because they never work for me.
Yeah, I don't believe them at all. I don't believe then I'm like, here I am on Retail Me Not. I'm like, what's going on? What am I doing? Shouldn't I be doing something else?
Exactly. Yeah, I should never be on the website Retail Me Not. Anyway, so one last question for you is, what is your hope for the advertising and marketing industry moving forward?
I have a lot of hope. I would like to see creative and media work harder together. And my hope is that for both sides to recognize the need to be better informed about each other's activity. I really do. And I think what that means is I'd like to see the creative side better embrace data and better embrace the consumer journey and what works and what doesn't work, and to take the appropriate feedback. But then I'd like to see the media side better understand the message that is being formed by the creative side, understand it a little bit more, have some sensitivity to it, and design media that meets the message. Because I feel like when that doesn't happen, that's when companies look like a company that has a brand agency or a creative agency and a media agency, versus when you see some of these better integrated companies that just seem to get it. You can tell a company's culture when the media matches the creative. You can always tell, because that means that's a company that agencies and creative services people or internal people, they enjoy working for. They believe in that message, and it's just out there, and it works. You can see it all the time. So I'd like to see that. And it's hard work and it's a commitment, but that's where you need a brave CMO.
Yeah. Speaking of brave CMOs, can you nominate another brave marketer that we should have on the podcast?
Kristen Maverick is an old colleague of mine. She works over at 360, and she'd be a wonderful person for you to bring on.
Yeah.
She's terrific. She runs all their social strategy, and she's making brave decisions every day.
All right, Chad, any final thoughts for the listeners?
If the subject of the theme of all this is being brave, it's like, you're not going to change anything. You're not going to do anything different unless you're being brave. And I think more people respect the behavior of somebody who is brave than somebody who's just following the line. And it's also okay to do both, but you just also have to learn how to at least express your ideas so then people understand where you're coming from, because then maybe that next time that idea will get through.
Well, Chad, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and we'll chat with you soon.
Thanks again.
Hopefully you enjoyed that episode. I truly enjoyed hearing Chad's story about Terry Tate and how Reebok got into the Super Bowl. But I also thought some interesting takeaways were this idea of the impulse economy. The fact that people are making purchases on impulse all the time. And Amazon has made that so easy for us, but it's more than just Amazon. It's happening across the web every day. And we also talked about how creative and media need to work together. You just get better advertising, better messaging when you have a coherent company culture that matches the media messaging. And that's when really magic happens within advertising. So if you liked what you heard today and found it valuable, it'd be super helpful if you took 2 minutes to leave us a short review in Apple Podcasts. Every review counts in helping us get to our show in more ears. And on a final note, if you have a brand, product, or service that you'd like to get in front of Brave's 30 million users, please email us adsales@brave.com and let us know you're a podcast listener to unlock one of 2 perks. If your budget is under $10,000 a month, we will bump you to the top of our self-serve waiting list. And if your budget is $10,000 or more, you'll qualify for a 25% podcast listener discount. Again, email us at adsales@brave.com. And finally, music credit goes to my brother, Ariel Devorin. Hopefully you enjoy this original music that he put together. And we'll see you next week on the Brave Marketer Podcast.